Joining us now on the fan guest hotline, powered by Gruber Law, he is Pete Dougherty of the Green Bay Press-Gazette. Follow him on Twitter at Pete Dougherty. Pete, thank you so much for coming on. How are you?
Doing well, Sparky. How are you today?
Doing well. Yeah, doing good. Training camp getting ready to start up here in a couple of days, which means from a sports talk perspective, life becomes easy until next February, which I'm very grateful for. But the Brewers are playing so well right now. It is so much fun talking about the Brewers every day, and that's not going to stop even though the Packers get going. But again, it does provide content every day because LaFleur is talking, players are talking. We get Goody and LaFleur both talking coming up on Wednesday, so looking forward to that. What's your one? I mean, you read 5 for the Press-Gazette. You can check that out at the Press-Gazette website. But what's your one big thing that you're interested in coming into this training camp?
The biggest thing I'm interested in, which I don't think camp will answer, is Jordan Love and, what kind of year he's going to have and how much he's improved. I think we'll get a sense, but you don't really know until you play the games with the quarterbacks. Will they pull those games out for you? Will they win games for you? Just from camp, I'm just really curious to see how Jordan Morgan does and if he can give Rasheed Walker a run for his money. I'm assuming Walker ends up, winning that job pretty easily, but you never know. So I'm curious.
Isn't that fake? Isn't it really? They're just going to try and get him at right guard for the year, and then next year he goes to left tackle, and then escalate Belton moves into right guard. That's how I think it's going to play it. Maybe I'm nuts. I don't know if it's. I don't know if it's fake, but I'm sure they're trying to put a burr in Walker's saddle. Because he started slow last year. He was kind of handed the job, and so maybe they want to get him started faster. I think they probably want to see if one, how Walker looks, and two, if they let Walker walk next offseason, is Jordan Morgan good enough to be their left tackle in 26 and 27? So I'm guessing that's part of it, is they want to see, can this guy be a legit starting left tackle in the league? Because I don't think he'll beat out Sean Ryan at right guard either. I'm assuming, Ryan's just a little bit better, and we'll win that too, and Morgan will end up being their 6th man for the season. Let me see if I got this right. They drafted this cat who I didn't want. I wanted a damn corner. They drafted this cat, and now we're going to possibly go into year 3, and he still will not have been a starter for this team. That's what you're telling me is a very good chance of happening?
I think there's a real good chance that for his first 2 years, he won't be the starter. Now, there are always injuries, too. So they lose somebody for the year, then he'll be a starter. Or even, he could end up starting games. You want your first-round pick to be so good that he forces his way onto the field. I don't think it's a disaster if he's not a starter. Now, what will be the telling point is if he's not a starter, or if he is a starter in 26, what position, and do they sign him? Do they do the 5th-year option with him for 28, and do they sign him to an extension? If he only starts for 2 years, 26 and 27, and then they don't do a second contract with him, then it's not a very good draft pick. But if he ends up not starting his first 2 years and then being a starter for the next 6, then it's fine. You're picking later in the first round. There's more misses down there than there end at the top, and there are a lot at the top too.
Pete Dougherty, Green Bay Press-Gazette. Follow him on Twitter at Pete Dougherty as he joins us here. Wisconsin Sports Daily, served up by Wendy's. You can see the face of Pete Dougherty right now if you go on YouTube at The Fan Milwaukee. Use that @ symbol at The Fan Milwaukee. And you can watch our conversation right there. Subscribe, like all that fun stuff they tell you to do on other YouTube channels. I'll tell you to do as well. Okay, so I said this offseason, and the more we go forward here, the more convinced I am of it, that they're trying to build this thing more like Philadelphia. Get heavier up front on the offensive line, really base it around Josh Jacobs, which I think they did for the most part last year, like Philly did with Saquon Barkley. Take some of the pressure off of Jordan Love. And then let him beat you on these play action passes and so forth. Now, the problem, I guess, kind of with that is, Jalen Hurts has been the topic of conversation because of that goofy ESPN executive poll or whatever, and they didn't rate him high enough. So now everybody's coming out to Jalen Hurts' defense, but it's kind of based on how the way the offense is structured, I think, kind of is how people maybe put Jalen Hurts into a different light. He's not asked to do as much as a lot of other quarterbacks are based on how that offense is run.
Yeah, he's Hurts is a good quarterback, and he's a really dangerous runner. So he makes that offense better in that way. And they're tough to defend. It's just, when he starts slowing down, I don't know that he's a guy that'll consistently beat you from the pocket. And when he starts slowing down, how long will he last then? Will he still be a starting quarterback at 34 or 35? I'm not sure about that. I think Love's got a lot more passing talent than he does. He's obviously nowhere near the runner. And then this is a huge year for Love. Year 3 as a starter. Mike Holmgren always said that's the season that's the year where you find out what you have in a quarterback, is that third year as a starter. So I'm really curious to see this guy. And he looked more, for what it's worth, in OTAs, he looked more in command, just like last year he looked more in command than he did, his first year as a starter. But it's just going to come down to, is he winning games for him? Is he making those crucial plays? And I think they are, they do want to be even a more run-oriented team. You can tell by their, signing Banks and drafting Belton and all that. But they also drafted 2 receivers too. So I think they just wanted to get more explosive and better in every way on offense.
Warren Sharp, you know who Warren Sharp is. He put out a tweet: best front sevens in 2025. The Green Bay Packers, let's see, they are 25th out of 32. And if you were to say, Sparky, do you think they'll be any higher than that going into next offseason? I would say, no, I don't think much is going to change. What would Pete Dougherty say?
I'd have trouble arguing with it. Edgerrin Cooper is a really interesting player. I think he could really be a stud this year. The Packers seem to be counting on Lucas Van Ness making a big jump.
Crazy.
I'm not sure they're going to get it, but we'll see. We'll see if the coaching, the change at defensive line coach matters. Rashawn Gary's kind of looking like he's a guy who's pretty good at getting pressure, but not so good at getting sacks. So is he a better player this year? Again, we'll see on that. We'll the 5th round pick. Why am I blanking on his name? Colin Oliver, is that it?
Yeah, Oliver's last name. Yep.
Yeah. Can he be? They drafted him to be a designated rusher. 5th round picks usually don't make a big impact as rookies, but it's not unheard of. So can he get 4 or 5 sacks this year and some pressures if he plays more as the season goes on? But if I were the Packers, I would still be really concerned about the pass rush. And that's the biggest question I have with them is, do they have enough rush to win these big games against good quarterbacks, or are they just going to have to win them in big-time shootouts? That's the thing I'd be worried about if I were them.
So last week, I believe it was, Charlie, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was last week, somebody put out a number on the pressure rate or whatever, Rashawn Gary versus TJ Watt, right? And
last Monday. Yep.
Last Monday. And they were relatively close with one another. However, the difference in snaps was mind-boggling as far as how many more snaps TJ Watt has had from Rashawn Gary's first year, 2019, to now. That would have been Watt's 3rd year. All the way till now, it wasn't even close. So then my producer Charlie said, well, let's go investigate. So he went and he looked, and he said the biggest difference is they keep pulling Rashawn Gary out, it looks like, in obvious rundowns. They take Gary off the field, and that's probably the biggest difference as far as why he doesn't have as many snaps as Watt. What say you to that?
Yeah, I'm not even sure. I think they pull him out a lot. I think he might have played fewer than 60% of the snaps last year. I totally get wanting to rotate those guys a lot. Fresh rushers. Remember how Seattle was, a decade ago with that? They had like 7 or 8 guys. They just kept rotating those guys through, and it was like a frenzy when those guys rushed. But, I don't think 60% is enough for a guy like Gary who's in his prime. He's got to be, probably closer to 80 than to 60. So he needs to play more. But there's obviously no comparison between the impact Gary has on a game and Watt. I mean, Watt is, clearly much more impactful than Gary has been.
How much better do you think this defense is another year into it, knowing Hafley's system, Hafley knowing the players, and they've played without Jair Alexander for majority of last season anyhow, so I don't think there's a huge adjustment from that perspective. And you add Hobbs, I guess, at cornerback. Do they get just better because of all those factors that I say?
Yeah, theoretically, but, you don't always see it with these things. But theoretically, yeah, they should be. And, Hafley sure, watching how that defense, improved over the course of the season, it sure looks like he's knows what he's doing. And, things will be a little different this year. They'll have different guys. Some guys are, on the upswing. Some guys are maybe starting on the downside of things. Is Kenny Clark, are his days as a pass rusher over now, or was it the foot injury he had last year? Was that really that big a factor? That's another thing we'll find out this year.
And how do they replace TJ Slaton? That's what I would like to know. Stopping the run. How is that? That's a big, wide body, man. For the most part, he was on the field.
I think I saw a stat where when he played, their yards per rush was like more. It was like 0.6 or 0.8 of a yard less, which is a lot if you add it up over, a couple hundred carries or whatever, 300 carries or whatever it is over the course of a season. So it's probably more than that. So I don't know. I think they're counting on their linebackers, Cooper and with Quay Walker. I think they see a guy, they still think he's very much improving. They think that'll make a difference. I think Wyatt's going to get more snaps, but he's not. Slaton was their one giant in there, and they don't have that now. So, they're going to have to find other ways to do it. But I think they're counting on, they're counting on basically a collective, Brooks and Wooden and all those guys just rotating in and collectively being at least as good stopping the run as they were last year.
Pete Dougherty, Green Bay Press-Gazette, joins us here on Wisconsin Sports Daily, served up by Wendy. Stream us live on the Odyssey app, AUDACY. Check us out on YouTube as well, at The Fan Milwaukee. Use that @ symbol, at The Fan Milwaukee. Like, subscribe, all that fun stuff. I want to change gears real quickly here before we wrap this up to the front office, mainly to Mark Murphy. On Friday, Ed Policy will meet with all the quote-unquote shareholders on Friday and have this whole conversation. I saw that Murphy pretty much said, kind of was down on himself a little bit for only grabbing one Super Bowl during his run of 17 years. And Policy comes in and says, yeah, we'll see about Gutekunst and LaFleur. They got 2 years left. So we'll see how this plays out and go from there. Do we feel like Policy is going to be less patient maybe than, say, a Harlan, than, say, a Murphy?
I don't think we know till we see him in action. He's had a chance to witness all this. My suspicion is he'll be close, at least, to as patient as those guys. And I think next offseason we either see, contract extensions for the coach and GM or a change at one or both spots. My guess is we'll see both those guys get extensions next year unless something goes really, really off the rails and it goes badly this year. But you never know that's how all these jobs are so interesting, whether it's going from a coach to coordinator or from coordinator to head coach or a scout to GM, or in this case to somebody taking over as president and CEO. You never know till they sit in the chair. You just don't know. And so this one will have to unfold over several years because, you have to think that this guy's going to be the president for at least a while.
16 years, right? What is he, 54? So that would be 16 years, gets you to 70 and go from there. Murphy's legacy, yes, on field, sure, has the Super Bowl, but his is more going to be off the field with Titletown District and everything that he was able to accomplish. Where does Policy figure out what his legacy is going to be in all of this? Is there still more to do that I'm not aware of that they're trying to get done, that Ed Policy is going to have to go about figuring out and getting done?
Yeah, there's probably more than he might even be aware of. Things change. Everything in this world changes a lot, and it changes pretty fast. Who knows what teams will be doing for revenue 5 years from now, 8 years from now, and what changes there'd be. So, there's still, I'm sure there's still a lot for his legacy on that side. And maybe, and of course, he'll be judged by how they do on the field too. I mean, Murphy, two things are true. One, it feels light that they only won one Super Bowl with Favre and Rodgers as their quarterbacks for, 30 whatever years it was.
Yeah, two Super Bowls in 30 years, 3 appearances.
Yeah, so that feels light. On the other, for Murphy, it was just, with Rodgers was the quarterback. So one in however many years he was the guy. It feels light, but also they won a lot of football games and they were a contender most years, a legit contender. Which is also really hard to do in this league. So both things are true. And with between that and Titletown, I mean, for whatever differences you might have with Murphy and what you might not like about what he did, I mean, it's hard to argue that he was not a successful president, not as successful as could have been on the field with, like I said, the one Super Bowl. But overall, you take the whole thing into scope. It's hard to dismiss him as not being successful.
Totally agree with you. I thought he was really, really, really good at what the job that he did while he was there. Pete Dougherty, Green Bay Press-Gazette. Follow him on Twitter at Pete Dougherty. Pete, thanks so much for coming on, man. I appreciate you.
Always fun talking with you, Sparky. Thanks for having me.